Hello guys, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new here. Today's video is going to be another reading wrap-up video going over all of the books that I read in April. Right now as I'm filming this, it is May 1st and I just finished a book yesterday, wrapped it up nice and clean. I read a ton of books this month. Let me count how many, I can't remember. 20. Honestly, that's more than I thought I read. That's kind of a lot, but a few of these were like really short and really fast to get through. It was like an okay month. I feel like I had a lot of very average books, but I did have a few, especially the last one that I read this month was so freaking good. One of my new like absolute favorite books was the very last book that I read this month. And I also got into some series this month. So let's just go over all of these. I've got my computer over here so I can look at my Goodreads to keep on track. The first book that I read this month was The Friend Zone by Abby Jimenez. This is the first in a series. I think there's 3 in this series. I really want to read the second one, but I don't like to just like dive into a book in a series, so I wanted to read this one first. And I do remember really enjoying reading this book, but now that it's been a month, the whole thing feels like really forgettable. Honestly, it's kind of one of those books where I like definitely enjoyed it while I was reading it, but like immediately like never thought of it ever again. But actually, now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, it's all coming back to me, and this one was really good. It was definitely like a big roller coaster of emotions. It was cute. I remember now, it was really cute. So this one is about Kristen and Josh, and Kristen has like extreme endometriosis, and so she had decided that she is going to get a hysterectomy. Once you have a hysterectomy, you like can't have kids, but she's pretty sure she's not fertile anyway because of like all of the scarring in her uterus and etc. So she's basically like kind of come to terms with the fact that she is not going to be able to have kids. And then she ends up meeting and absolutely falling for someone who really wants kids, like is desperate to have a huge family, wants to have a bunch of kids. And that's sort of like the main plot is like that going on, but there's also so much more stuff going on within the story and with the other characters, and a lot of this book is really sad. I said that I thought it was forgettable, but now that I'm talking about it, like I remember how good this book was. Now I need to really try to read the second book in this series. I rated this one 4 out of 5. A lot of people in the reviews really don't like the ending of this book, but I didn't mind it. I thought that it was really good. After that, I read The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker. This book is about Calla, which I don't like that name, so while I was reading it, I was calling her Callie. She's basically like a fashion blogger influencer in Canada, I believe. She's grown up there with her mom, but her biological dad, who she's never really met since she was 2, lives in Alaska. Her mom left him and left with her when she was 2 years old, and she's not seen her dad since then. But then she finds out that he is sick and she wants to go to Alaska and spend some time with him and get to know him. So a lot of the book is about that, but there's also obviously some romance in there. There's a boy named Jonah who works at her dad's company. They have a total grumpy sunshine trope going on. She's the sunshine, he's super grumpy, bearded, Alaska airplane man, which I normally don't really love the grumpy sunshine trope. I think it's kind of annoying. I don't normally love a big grumpy burly man, but I felt like it was done really well in this book, and it was also a very slow burn with the romance, so you kind of got to be patient. And it was also a lot sadder than I was expecting it to be. I don't know, going into this I thought it was going to be much more like on the romance side, but it's a lot more like plot driven, and it was sad. But I rated this one 4 out of 5. Next I had a DNF. I did not finish this book and I read half of it, and that was The Lucky Escape. I thought that this book was going to be really good. When I was reading the summary, it was giving off like very The Unhoneymooners vibes, and I thought that that was going to be like a really good, fun read. I can't remember the character names of this book already, but the main character had been left at the altar by her fiance. He literally left her on their wedding day, just like did not show up to the wedding. But she decides to go on her honeymoon still, and she actually ends up like reconnecting with an old friend from like summer camp that she knew like a long time ago, and they decide to go together. And so I thought the summary was really good, but while I was reading it, I was just like could not get into it. I couldn't get myself to care about the characters, and it was like not as lighthearted as I was expecting it to be at all, and I just did not want to keep reading it. I don't want to waste my time reading a book I don't want to read, so I just did not finish it at 50%. So then after that DNF, I read The Flatshare by Beth O'Leary, and I was so pleasantly surprised by this book. This book I was expecting to be like a very lighthearted and like kind of funny rom-com type of book. It actually ended up being a lot more like in-depth than I was expecting. It's basically about two roommates. This guy who like completely works nights is renting out his room and his bed during the times that he's gone at work. So it's two roommates who are literally sharing a bed and a room. They work out a roommate situation where they both literally share a bed, but they never meet each other in person. So the whole story, they're kind of getting to know each other based off of like the things in the apartment that they share and through post-it notes that they're leaving for each other like all over the apartment. And I thought it was really good. I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was really sweet. I rated that one 3 out of 5 stars. After that, I started the Off-Campus series by Elle Kennedy. During this month, I read the first 3 books in the series. I didn't read them all back to back, but I'm gonna talk about them all right now, just, you know, lump them all together. So the first one in the series is The Deal, and I liked this one the best out of all the 3 that I've read so far, because it honestly felt like the second and the third book were literally just the exact same plot, same everything, with just like copy paste characters. They're not literary masterpieces by any means at all, but they're very entertaining and very steamy and just a fun read, you know? They're all hockey college romances, so they follow these 4 hockey players who are all roommates. So the first one, The Deal, is about Hannah and Garrett. Garrett is the captain of the hockey team, and he is so cute, so hot, big time player, yada yada yada. And Hannah is a music student. She is a singer, songwriter, and they share a class together that is like really hard. They have a really difficult professor, and Hannah is doing really well in the class and Garrett is doing really bad in the class. And so he really needs help to have her tutor him, but she does not want to. She's like not interested. And yeah, basically romance ensues from there. It's nothing crazy, but it is just really fun and steamy, and yeah, that's pretty much all it's got going for it. The Deal, I rated a 4 out of 5 just because it was like such an enjoyable read. Even though it was like nothing spectacular, I did really like it. And the second one in the series is called The Mistake. This one is about Logan and Grace, and literally this felt like a replica of the first book with 2 different named characters. Like, yeah, there was a little bit of like different plot stuff going on in there, but it was just so freaking similar and like not as enjoyable in my opinion. Although I did like Logan better, I hated Grace. I rated this one a 3 out of 5. The third one that I read in the series is The Score, which is the third one. This one has such a high rating on Goodreads, which is so surprising to me because I thought that this was like the worst one I've read so far. This one is about Dean and Allie. Pretty much the same thing as like the first 2. Dean is like a crazy player, doesn't date, just hooks up, like blah blah blah, and then she is like hard to get. She's not interested, so now he's interested, and it's just so repetitive. It was definitely a lot spicier than the first 2. I mean, all of this whole series is like very spicy. It's pretty much the whole point of the books. This one was like on a different level than the first 2. Just like by the third one, I was like pretty sick of like the same story over and over with different characters, so I only rated this one a 2 out of 5. But apparently the fourth book has like a totally different plot and everything, so I think I probably will go on to read that one just so I can finish the series. Next after that was Without Merit by Colleen Hoover. Gotta have a couple Colleen Hoover books a month to stay happy, you know what I mean. I went into this book having absolutely no idea what this book was about, which is my favorite way to go into Colleen Hoover books, because I feel like knowing any of the synopsis can sometimes like ruin things. I just don't want anything spoiled for me ahead of time. I want to go into it blind. So that's what I did. And I felt like I had no idea what was going on or what was going to happen for like the whole book. At least like the first 75% of the book, I was like, what is the story? Like, what is the plot here? What's going on? It was just very, very different than any other Colleen Hoover book that I've read so far. It definitely was not my favorite, but I did still enjoy it. It just wasn't my like typical like Colleen Hoover book experience where I'm like absolutely obsessed with it, if you know what I mean. Like I said, not my favorite Colleen Hoover book, but it was still good. I do still think it's like worth the read. I gave this one a 3 out of 5. It was just like pretty average to me. Ugh, Okay, and then I read My Favorite Half Night Stand by Christina Lauren, and I was so freaking disappointed by this book because it was the first Christina Lauren book that I did not absolutely love. Christina and Lauren, if you didn't know, it's two separate authors that write together. They're one of my favorite authors for sure. Like, I have just absolutely devoured every single book I've read by them. A lot of them are in my like top favorite books ever, and so I have like really high expectations for when I read one of their books, and this one was so disappointing to me. And I guess not because it wasn't a good book, because it was a good book and it was well written, but I just like did not like the tropes of this book. This book is about a girl named Millie and her like group of friends from work. Basically, they are all in like academia, I think. That part of the book was actually like really fun, the dynamic of her group of friends, but it's essentially about her kind of catfishing one of her really good friends because she basically like realizes that she has feelings for him, and there's kind of a vibe going on between them, and like obviously he has feelings for her too, but she is like for some reason like too afraid to tell him and doesn't want to mess up the friendship, etc. And so she's basically catfishing him, and he's like falling for this girl that's actually her, and it's just this whole thing, and I just hate the dishonesty. It's not for me. It made it so cringy to read. Even when you have good intentions, it's just not cool. I gave this one a 3 out of 5, which now thinking back feels like a generous rating. I feel like now I would probably rate it lower, like a 2. Yeah, it just wasn't for me. Wasn't my favorite Christina Lauren book. But the next book I read totally redeemed that because it was another Christina Lauren book and it was so good. And that is Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating. This book was so freaking cute, and I feel like this is a very underrated Christina Lauren book. This was another one that was really short, really fast read. I think it was less than 300 pages, so it was really easy to get through. I loved the characters so much. The banter, it was so funny. I was laughing out loud multiple times during this book. It's mostly about this girl, Hazel, who is just like really eccentric, a really wild, like wild card character. She's got like a big personality. She's kind of a lot to handle. And also Josh, who's more like introverted, clean cut, not so crazy. They meet in college and kind of have like a moment in college, and then they don't see each other again for like another 10 years or something, where they cross paths again and they start dating together. Like not each other, they start dating other people, like going on double dates with other people together, but obviously while falling for each other. And it was a really, really good read. The ending was a little ridiculous and cheesy, but it was still good. And overall, I gave this one a 4 out of 5. Okay, next I read a thriller, and that's a little out of character right now because if you can tell, romance has me in an absolute chokehold. But every once in a while, it's nice to break it up a little bit, and the summary of this one like really had me hooked, and that is Playing Nice by J.P. Delaney. This one was really good, and it was really interesting to read as like a mom because it's about 2 babies who were accidentally switched in the NICU. So this guy shows up at this other guy's door and basically tells him that he is like the biological father of the other guy's son. They both have 2 boys who were born super prematurely on the same day and ended up being taken to the same NICU and got accidentally switched. So now the boys are like a little over 2 years old, and they're trying to figure out like what to do, like if they should switch them back or keep them with their like families that have been raising them, and like exactly how to like navigate that. But there is so much more to it, and the ending really shocked me. I did not see that coming. It really stressed me out to read, but it was also really good. I gave this one a 4 out of 5, and then I went straight back to romance because thrillers are boring to me and I need love. And then I read Just Haven't Met You Yet by Sophie Cousins. This book was really cheesy and predictable, but it was also really, really sweet, and I actually liked it a lot more than I was expecting to. It's about a girl who is basically like obsessed with love. She has a job for like an online platform, basically writing about other people's like meet cutes and how they meet their significant others, and like writing about people's love stories, and she's kind of like all consumed by these like amazing love stories and whatnot. She ends up traveling, and when she gets to where she's going, she takes the wrong suitcase on accident. And when she like gets to her hotel room and opens her suitcase and like realizes it's not hers, and she's looking through what's in the suitcase, she is convinced that the owner of the suitcase that she has is her soulmate. There's all sorts of stuff in the suitcase, and she's like, this is the man that I'm like meant to be with, and this is our meet cute, like I found his suitcase. So then she has to find out who the suitcase belongs to and if that's her soulmate. And I don't want to say too much more, but it was a really good story. I really liked it. So I gave that one a 4 out of 5. And then I read The Hating Game by Sally Thorne, and I think I am like the last person in the world to read this book. Like, I am so freaking late to The Hating Game, and it definitely lived up to the hype for me. I really, really enjoyed it. It was such a fun read. I loved the banter. I loved the characters. It had me laughing out loud. I loved Lucy's character in this story. I thought that it was written so well. She was so funny. It really captured her personality like very well. If you haven't read The Hating Game or seen the movie, it's a workplace enemies to lovers romance. I loved it. I thought it was so cute and so funny. And so immediately after I finished this, I went straight to Netflix and watched the movie, and I hated the movie. I just thought that the movie was so bad. It like didn't hit the way I wanted it to, you know? That's such a hard part of books being made into movies too. I just feel like they cannot capture all of the detail that the book can. Like, obviously they can't. There's just not enough time to like shove that much like detail and info into a movie. It was very cringe to me, and like the guy's voice in the movie was like not low enough. It just wasn't it. After that, I went head first into some mafia romance. I did not think that I would like it as much as I did, but I'm a mafia romance girly now. I was about it. I had a good time. I ended up here because I was, you know, scrolling on TikTok as you do, and I found Sophie Lark on TikTok, and there is a whole section of TikTok that is just like obsessed with Sophie Lark and her mafia romance series, and I had extreme FOMO. I was like, I want to know what these people are freaking out about. I need to be included. I need to be involved. So I got involved. I included myself, and I started Sophie Lark's Brutal Birthright series. Now listen, like the off-campus series, these are not literary masterpieces, you know? They are not in-depth, beautifully written books, but they are steamy and they're entertaining and they are so good. They're also so fast to read because the way she writes, like, they're basically like double spaced. There's not a lot to these books. They could stand to have a lot more plot and character development, but there's not room with all the smut that's in there. So yeah, don't have like crazy high expectations for these books being really in-depth and really like plot driven, I guess, but they are still kind of, I don't know. I liked them a lot more than I thought I would. I read 3 of these this month. The first one is Brutal Prince. This one is about Callum and Ada. This is a enemies to lovers romance and arranged marriage. The two main characters hate each other, literally have tried to kill each other. Like, that's how much they hate each other. I feel like I'm gonna sound ridiculous explaining these because it's just so ridiculous, but you know, whatever, I'm in it. Callum is in the Irish mafia, I think, and Ada is in the Italian mafia, and they're like enemies. They hate each other. They're causing a lot of drama, stirring up a lot of drama for their families. Their families basically end up forcing them to get married to each other so they can form an alliance. Anyway, they have to get married. They hate each other until they don't anymore. And then it's really, really steamy. I loved it. I thought it was great. These books are so short. I was able to read them in like half a day. I gave Brutal Prince a 3 out of 5. And then I moved on to Stolen Heir. I loved it. I feel so stupid talking about these, but whatever. I freaking loved this one. This one is about Miko, who is the head of the Polish mafia. All of these books take place in Chicago, or at least the ones I've read so far take place in Chicago. He's the head of the Polish mafia, and he kidnaps Nessa, who is the youngest daughter of the Irish mafia. Basically like the plot of the Beauty and the Beast. Like, he has her trapped in his house, holding her captive. And here I am loving it. I'm loving it. Is there a little bit of Stockholm Syndrome? Maybe. I don't know. I loved it. I thought this one was really good. This one was definitely my favorite that I have read so far. I have a million more to go, so I will keep you posted. But I still just gave it a 3 out of 5 because these books are nothing crazy. And then the third one I read is Savage Lover. This one is about Nero and Camille. Nero is also in the Italian mafia, and Camille is not in any mafia. She is just like a regular girl. I did not like this one as much as the first two. This one was like a lot more like plot focused. Like it felt like it focused a lot more on the story than the romance, and I thought that was boring. Also, the first 2 books were really hyping up Nero to be like this ultimate bad boy, and then I just didn't like him, you know? He wasn't my favorite. I wanted to go back to the Beauty and the Beast. I gave this one a 2 out of 5. I wasn't wowed by it, but I'm going to keep going with the mafia romance. Okay, after that I finished Circe by Madeline Miller, and I had been listening to this one as an audiobook for literally a month. It took me a month to get through this audiobook. I tried reading it as like a regular book, but Greek mythology was just like too hard for my brain to compute. I couldn't read it. I really enjoyed it as an audiobook. It was a lot easier to kind of absorb, and I thought that the girl who read it did a really good job. But because this is like a Greek mythology story, I had to really be focused on it and like really like actively like super listening. So it took me a really long time because I couldn't just be like listening to it casually with my kids. This one was my friend's book club pick this month. I normally wouldn't go for like a Greek mythology story like this because I'm just really not interested in that. But yeah, I feel like I have some mixed feelings on this because I just really don't enjoy Greek mythology, and I feel like I didn't know enough about it that it was really confusing at first to grasp the story, grasp what was going on. There's so much to know about Greek mythology that it makes it kind of confusing if you don't know anything. And I took a Greek mythology course in college, and I literally feel like I learned more about Greek mythology from this book than I did in that class. It's also like a slice of life style book where there's no real like plot to the story. It's just following this Greek goddess throughout her life. It was written so beautifully, but it was so boring. I did enjoy it, but it wouldn't be like something I would typically go for. I rated this one a 4 out of 5. It was really hard for me to rate. I just like could not figure out what I felt about it. And then after that, I read Forever Interrupted by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and this book this is the first Taylor Jenkins Reid book that I didn't absolutely love, but it was also really well written and a really good book. It just was so sad. That's one thing about Taylor Jenkins Reid. She knows how to write sad. She knows how to hurt you. It's about this girl, and she meets this boy, and they fall in love, and they have this whirlwind romance that's like really fast. They end up eloping, they get married, and then he gets into an accident and dies 8 days after they get married. I didn't know what this book was really about going into it, and I think if I did, I wouldn't have read it because it was just so depressing. You got to see all of the love story and all of them falling for each other, and then you also had this whole other side of her grieving his death. Not only sad, but it was also just boring. I only gave this one a 2 out of 5. If you want to read something that's just freaking sad and hurts the whole time, you can read that, but not for me. Then I read A Not So Meet Cute by Megan Quinn. I've seen everybody talking about this book on Instagram lately, especially like Caitlin B has been posting a bunch about this book. So I was really excited to read it. I was really not impressed by this one. It felt like such a typical rom-com with copy-paste characters. It follows such a predictable, like this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens. Like there was nothing special about it in my opinion. It's a fake dating, enemies to lovers trope, and it was very steamy, and it was like kind of a good fun read, but it was so predictable and there was nothing special about it, and I felt like the main characters were like just kind of like very crude and gross. I'd probably give this one like a 2.5. I rounded it down to 2. I'm down to my last 3 books that I read this month, and these were probably my favorite books that I read this month were these last 3. Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. I was so excited to read this one. I went into it having almost no idea what it was about. Like all Colleen Hoover books, I like to go in as blind as possible, and this was really good. I really don't want to say too much because I do think that it's just like so worth it to go into her books not knowing much. So I don't even want to give a summary of it, but just add it to your TBR because she's never written a bad book ever. I really liked this one. It was a really fast read, like all of her books. I gave it a 4 out of 5. Then I read Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. And I freaking loved it. This book was adorable. It's definitely a YA, like young adult book. It's a high school based book, which I normally don't love because I'm just too old. I don't relate to it, but I thought that this one was done really well. It was so stinking cute. It's definitely one of the cutest books I've read in a while. I was like a giddy schoolgirl reading it. It was very cute. It's also Lynn Painter's debut novel. This is the first book she's ever written, and it was phenomenal. I feel like a lot of debut novels I've read, they felt like debut novels, but this was not that. This was so freaking good. I felt like she had written like a million books before this. This also has a little bit of fake dating trope in it, and it's in high school. I don't want to say too much about what it's about, but it was really, really good. The boy character in this book was just like everything to me. I loved him. He's like every high school girl's dream boy. Yeah, I gave this one a 4 out of 5. And then the grand finale, the best book that I read this month, the best book I read in a really long time, was The Idea of You by Robin Lee. This book is criminally underrated. I cannot believe that more people don't talk about this book. I want to like shout from the rooftops that everybody needs to read this book because I loved it so much. And the cover is so ugly. I've had this book on my TBR for a long time and I have been ignoring it because of how ugly the cover is, which is so stupid. But like, it's just so hard not to judge books by their covers, you know? But this book was a masterpiece. I can't stress it enough. This book was so good. It's by far one of my favorite books that I've read in a long time. It went immediately to my favorites. As soon as I finished it, I wanted to immediately turn around and read it again. The main character in this book was inspired by Harry Styles. So it's a story of this girl falling in love with basically Harry Styles, which was really fun to read, but it was written in such a unique way. It was so good. Like I can't say it enough times. I loved it so much. This was also a debut novel, which I cannot freaking believe. I will read anything this author writes. I want to send her flowers in the mail and thank her for this book. It was so beautifully written. It was heartbreaking. It was spicy. The dialogue in this book was amazing. The love story, like I just don't know how she did it. It hurts you. Immediately add this to the top of your TBR, read it, and then immediately DM me on Instagram and tell me every single thought you have about this book. I'm gonna read it again. An easy 5 out of 5. I wish I could give it more than 5. 10 out of 5. All of the stars. Okay, wow, I've been talking for so long. Sorry that this video is so long. Those are all of the books that I read in April. 20, that's a record. We'll see how many I get to next month. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us on Instagram. Follow my Goodreads that I will have linked. And I will see you guys all in my next video.